right, welcome to the 2024 Garrett Park Candidates Forum. My name is Stephen Welker, and I'm the president of the Garrett Park Citizens Association. If you don't know who we are, the CA organizes town-wide events such as 4th of July festivities, Spooky Woods, the Brewfest, and the annual town dinner at Town Hall. But we also serve as the forum for public discussion of matters of community interest. And the most important way we do that, by far, is hosting the annual Candidates Forum. I'm joined by Vice President Tom DeChara. He's in the front row over there. Treasurer Rory Smith and Secretary Betty Fout. Betty's going to be monitoring the chat. So if you are online and you have something that you wanted to chat in, she's happy to ask the question for you. But normally we would encourage you to speak up, raise your hand and speak. We'll talk about all that soon. And just as an aside, we're going to start ramping up our 4th of July planning after this. So if you want to get involved, you have any opinions about that, please come and talk to us. We're always happy to hear you. All right, so I want to welcome our 4 candidates for elective office. This year we are asked to fill 3 spots, 2 seats for town council and the mayor. For the 2 council seats, we have 2 candidates, Jerry Bennett and Lisa Max, both of whom are seeking to serve an additional term. For the office of mayor, we have the incumbent, Joanna Welch, and we have a second candidate in Chris Keller. Thank you to the 4 of you for coming tonight. So the Candidates Forum, what is it? It's really an opportunity for all Garrett Park residents to get to know their future town leaders, or current town leaders as well, and ask respectful but probing questions about candidates' governing philosophy and their goals for the next term. So you can ask specific questions, you can ask general questions. We just primarily ask that you ask them respectfully and hopefully in a way that everyone here can field. So let's try not to get too into the weeds with your questions. The plan to start is we're going to do 3 to 5 minutes, or let's say 1 to 5 minutes if you want to go very brief. 1 to 5 minute opening statements from each candidate, after which we'll open the floor for questions from online and for people in person. I will be serving as a moderator. I'm going to try and just go around and have different people start. I'm just going to try and keep it fair. So my goal in moderating, again, is to ensure we cover as many topics as possible. So people are going to be given about 2 minutes to respond, but if you don't have anything to say, you can pass. And certainly you don't have to take 2 minutes. But our good treasurer here, Rory, will give you a yellow card to indicate that you have 30 seconds left, and he will give you a red card when you are at the buzzer. It's not a penalty. It's just please be quiet. So I just, this is not the venue to have a very long-winded sort of speech from the residents. Try to be brief, try to be clear and concise in your questions, and that is very much appreciated. And again, try to ask general questions that everyone can field. It's worth stating the obvious that the 2 council candidates present at this forum will be elected on election day, regardless of what they say today. But thank you very much for coming. But yes, we have a contested election for mayor, so that raises the stakes of this candidates forum for the first time in a good amount of years, actually. I think so we're very excited for that, and I think the turnout reflects that as well. And it goes without saying, it's in everyone's best interest to keep things civil. These folks are running for elective office, but they're also our neighbors first and foremost. They're donating their time and they're putting themselves out there for what can sometimes be thankless and frustrating work. So I'd ask you all to join me in giving them a round of applause for being here and volunteering to run for elective office. Oh man, I wrote too much here. Okay, so quick housekeeping. If you're present at town hall and you want to ask a question, you can just walk over there. That's the mic. Please speak into the mic. Say your name. Say your street address. That's all we need. And if there's a lot of people, you don't have to wait in line. You can wait. And then, just when the spirit moves, you come up. If you're online, please locate the raise your hand reaction. Because that would be the best way to signal to us that you want to speak. Now, I understand some people have called in and you may or may not be that familiar with Zoom. If for whatever reason you're not getting recognized, unmute yourself and start shouting, and eventually we will yield the floor. And then, of course, after you've raised your hand, do be kind to lower it when you are done. Betty will be monitoring the chat again, so if you have a chat question, please. But if you chat in, please make sure you say who you are and your street address. This is primarily this is exclusively for town residents. Although everyone's welcome to attend, but we're reserving the questions for town residents. All right, so let's get to opening statements. Why don't we start to my left all the way? Go ahead, take it away.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Hi, my name is Jerry Lee Bennett. I live on Keswick Street here on the south side of Garrett Park, and I have been serving as a council member since November of 2019. And I've been enjoying it very much. Some of you may be surprised to hear me say that. It's not always easy to serve on the town council or as mayor in a town such as Garrett Park, where everyone wants to share opinions, and they should. But I really feel like people have been very welcoming and have been congenial, and I'm really glad to have had this opportunity to serve the town in this capacity. I want to mention just a few things that I'm proud of accomplishing since I've been in this role. The compost program was an idea that a resident raised at a town council meeting. I heard that and I thought about it, and I really wanted to see what we could do in that area. We weren't able to do it overnight, and part of that is because of the citizen input that we sought. I raised it with the council. I suggested that we conduct a survey and do some research. We did that. We had enough interest. We put a small amount of funding in the budget for the next year to do a pilot. We ran the pilot. It was successful. We were able to double the number of people in town who are getting curbside composting picked up. So it's not just people who are already paying for it themselves. We have increased composting in Garrett Park through this program. Composting helps us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in landfills. It has an environmental benefit, and in this time of evident climate change, I really think it's something that Garrett Park can stand behind and further. Many of us, myself included, compost in our backyards, but that is not really an accessible or realistic solution for every citizen. So I'm really glad that we as a council and as a town are supporting a variety of ways for residents to compost. I've also been the town liaison for the development that has been planned for Strathmore Avenue. I'm not a proponent of that development. My primary goal was to limit the potential harm to our community through traffic, potential pedestrian safety, bicycle safety. And I do think that through our joint advocacy with the Citizens Association in Garrett Park Estates and White Flint Park, that we have been able to get some concessions in our favor. So I'm very proud of collecting and forwarding citizen input, encouraging citizens to send their own input, because many voices are stronger than one. In terms of priorities for another term, I really would like to continue to promote more transparency and better communication. I think we have improved in that regard, and we can keep improving. There's always room for improvement with communication. Sometimes we all get busy, but we can do more. So I would like to continue to be an advocate for transparency and communication amongst the council, with the public, making sure that we seek input from community members through surveys, through council meetings, and committees, that the way we have traditionally, but also to use new technology as best we can. Additionally, I am a strong advocate for making sure that we have a sustainable budget for the town hall renovation, but also that we reserve enough budget for other pressing infrastructure and maintenance requirements in town. There's probably more I could say, but I want to stay within my time and before that yellow or red card drops, pops up. If you would like to talk to me in person, offline, I'm very happy to take a call, take an email, and converse with you. I really do want to serve you as a resident of Garrett Park, and I look forward to potentially serving, there are only two of us, but you never know about the write-in candidates for another 2 years on the town council. Thank you.
Lisa?
Thank you. My name's Lisa Max. I've lived in Garrett Park for 34 years. I'm currently building a house to age in place in on Montrose, so I'm planning to move hopefully this summer. This is my second term for potentially serving on the town council, and I've really enjoyed it. I think that it's a really wonderful town, and I really appreciate the participation of the community and how strongly people feel about living here and how lucky we all feel to be able to live in this beautiful community. I serve on the archives committee, which has been great. We've started to do oral histories of some of the residents who've lived here for many years. And I also have served on the Parks and Open Space Committee. My background is in real estate development. And so I've been very interested in helping to further the development of Town Hall and making sure that we have the sufficient funds for the redevelopment of this important community asset. So I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanna?
Chris, can you go first?
Oh.
You mind?
Chris?
Certainly. I'm Chris Keller. I want to thank you all for coming out. Thank the Citizens Association for holding this. And most especially, I want to thank my elected colleagues here. I've sat in these chairs and I appreciate what they do. I appreciate in both senses of that word. We're grateful, but I also understand what's involved. I was on the council for 10 years. I was mayor for 4 years. Just back one space for those who don't know me. My wife Henry and I moved here in 1980. We live over on Claremont Place. We raised both of our sons in Garrett Park, and they went to local public schools. As I run for mayor again, much has changed as I'm looking at the Zoom screen, and much has not changed. Communication has been an issue in this town since time immemorial, and like Jerry Lee and all of the others, we need to strengthen our existing forms of communication and seek new ones. In terms of communication with the residents, I will resume the mayor's letter in the Bugle. I will seek to fine-tune the channels we already have, like the listservs and the website, and look for other ways to increase communication and via that, citizen involvement. I think citizen involvement is really key. We've made a lot of strides in this town, putting the town on a very business-like basis. But in the process of doing so, we're beginning to lose some essential connections to the residents. When we bid out contract work, this is a small town. We can't do it all ourselves. I understand the need to bid out certain things, work, consultation, and the like, but it needs to be done so with a Garrett Park element. We need to find out first, before simply doing the reflex reaction of putting something out for bid, we need to find out first what the needs and desires of the residents are to help put some constraints on that, and then have them involved at various stages in the process. In that sense, we can do some institutional things. I will stand up the Parks and Open Spaces Committee again, and some more ad hoc things. I think more informal citizen meetings, not just in town hall, recorded, so on. I will have office hours during which I will encourage folks to come by and chat about issues. And we need also to involve our youngest residents. I think that as with any institution of this kind, you need to have the eye on the future and be building for future generations in this town. That's always meant including the younger generation, children, and I'd like to especially pursue that. Budgeting, we have made, again, great strides, but it needs tightening. And especially scrutiny of the operating budget, which is ballooning at a rather alarming rate. As mentioned earlier, Town Hall is really the key priority here, and I hope to revitalize and reestablish momentum in the restoration and renovation of Town Hall. In that respect, I was on the council when we renovated Penn Place, and I think it's analogous in many respects. No two projects are ever exactly the same, and we are wise to follow the template of what was done there. Restoration, careful restoration of an old 19th century structure and putting a new, not just patch and paint refurbishment of the mid 20th century addition. I think that's a useful pattern to follow here. So I will be guided by your questions from here on out. And we'll have to institute a program for seating time. So thank you for your attention. And let's be guided by citizen questions then.
Thank you, Chris. Joanna?
My name is Joanna Welch. I've been mayor for one term, just 2 years. Prior to that, before a gap, I was on the council for 5 years. And it's hard to look back and get caught up actually in the day-to-day and think, oh, what are we doing? You know, what have we accomplished? But we've actually done so much as a group. The current council plus our indispensable staff and especially our town manager and assistant town manager. And we've come further and done so many things. Among the things that I'm most excited about are this renovation of this town hall. This came to me as a project, something to look at when I first ran for council, or when I was first on the council in 2013. And we didn't actually start doing the big work of starting the actual design until 2 years ago. And to see how far it's come since then, we're not far enough. We've got lots to go, but we've definitely made a lot of progress. Included in that progress is finally being far enough along that we're eligible for funds from the state. We just received, got news last week that that our delegation supported and the House of Delegates, I mean the State House supported $300,000 for us for this project. We couldn't have done that until we got to this point. Another thing I'm really excited about coming up is speed bump on Weymouth Avenue. This was something that residents requested, and they polled their neighbors, and we discussed it several times. We even had traffic consultations about the best way to institute this. That's coming up in the next month or so, as well as a reconfiguration of Kenilworth, the intersection at Kenilworth and Argyle. This is an intersection that has plagued us for a very long time, and I think we finally have a design that will truly make a difference. There are so many other things that we've done, but I want to look ahead. And speaking of communication, I recognize that has been one of the areas that I've dropped the ball to some extent, and that's, as a result, it's one of my priorities, is how to do that better, how to better update residents and about the direction the path I see forward, as well as being more, well, that better communication. I also see a path for us breaking ground on this building in fall 2025. I think that's an absolutely reasonable thing that we can accomplish. And the other piece that I think is really important that we start to look at is how we can reimagine Cambria Park. I think there's a lot of work that can be done there and a lot of ways that we can serve the entire town in new and different ways, including our little furry friends, make them a nice, safer place to play. So those are kind of my big pitches, and got lots of other things to say, but I think they'll be better served in form of answering questions. So please.
Okay, thank you. So now is the time. I implore those of you, if you have a question, this is the best time to come up and step up to the mic and ask a question for the candidates. We have a question from online. That's a great way to kick it off. Betty, would you like to go to the mic and read the question?
Oh. Okay. This is from Richard Folkers from Kenilworth Ave. For the mayoral candidates, I have significant concerns about transparency and respect towards citizens by the current town administration. In an era of easy, broad communications, how will you commit to, first, keeping citizens apprised of your thinking on issues of concern, and second, how will you work to correct the town's missteps rather than flatly defending them?
Joanna, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So there are awkward things that we have to do in town government. There are awkward ways that awkward positions where we can say things, can't say things, we can only say certain, and as cryptic as I'm being now is sometimes as far as we can go in certain situations. As for correcting bad policy and bad laws, that is absolutely something that we intend to do. I'm sorry. I don't know how to answer without being too specific. And yes, communication is very important and respect is very important. And I own the areas where I've not been as strong as I should. And one of the things we've done at the behest of Town Manager Barb Matthews is look at our code of ordinances and have it examined for inconsistencies and have it considered in terms of ways that is internally non-viable, as well as ways that it contradicts state and county law. And among the issues that, or when we find issues that need correction, we're intending to address them. And the areas that Mr. Folker's referring to are fit under that purview.
Chris?
If I were a proper politician, I would make campaign promises and they would start with fixing the acoustics in this hall. I'm not sure I heard all of the question, but let me say this. As an attorney, after 25 years of litigation and inheriting a lawsuit when I became mayor the first time here, I can say unequivocally that anyone, but especially a municipal corporation, should do anything they can to settle any lawsuit, to avoid any lawsuit in the initial instance, to settle if it comes about, and to be as transparent as possible, given the exigencies of any kind of legal issue. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of constraints. But one constraint that isn't there is just letting the people know what the cost to the town in attorney, professional fees and otherwise is when you're involved in a lawsuit. There's no constraint on letting folks know. And that is a really key factor in any legal issue at the town. I don't know if that answered the questions though, because I'm not sure I heard them.
That answered the question?
Did you want to address that at all, or it was to the mayors, but.
I think it was
Mayor
addressed
Kennedy.
to the mayor.
I think it was addressed, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Todd Eisenstadt. I'm at 10809 Keswick Street. And I guess I want to follow up on the question about the town hall as the council is grappling with, you know, how much to spend on the town hall remodel. I would like to ask the candidates for your thoughts, because it seems that we've done a fairly good job of saving money, and Mayor Welch conveyed that the state, through the good graces of her office and the town manager, have gotten several $100,000. But we're still, if you look at the range of plans, the sort of the deluxe model of the town hall restoration, where we add the restored facade, the historic facade, as well as refurbishing and getting ADA compliance and other efficiency measures. We're still in our fundraising, which includes some capital savings, capital account savings, these grant monies, the COVID, some of the COVID money that we've saved. We're still about at least $1 million short. In a town with an annual budget of less than 2 million, that's a lot of money. And some have gone so far as to suggest that perhaps, as with Penn Place, we should take out a bond issue. Penn Place was paid out over about 20 years, as I understand it. And the payback, the debt service, would be, 5 to 7% of the town's budget annually. So I think that may be an extreme measure, but I would like to hear from the candidates, especially because I myself as a council member am grappling with this, as we all are as citizens. How far should we go to make the town hall better? Do we want to restore it to its pristine historic condition? Do we want it to just be functional and usable, as we don't use it nearly as much as we all use Penn Place? And it's a symbolic building. But I guess I don't want to editorialize too much, but I will leave.
We'll let the council candidates field first.
I'm happy to go first. So I've spoken to Peter Benjamin and I think Chris Keller, and then I've spoken to Barb Matthews about this. So when Penn Place was financed, they had income streams from the post office and black market. And the bond issue was structured in such a way that my understanding is that it didn't cost the town residents any additional money. The town renovation was paid for by the streams of income that were produced. The renovation of this space is, I believe, going to be possible potentially by a few things. One is, you're not going to really know what the real costs are for renovating this space until you actually do final plans and specs and put it out to bid for subcontractors and go through a process called value engineering, where you can start to refine the spec and the scope of the project to meet your budget needs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I believe that there are sources of revenue in our budget that could potentially pay for a large amount of the bond issue, should we decide that we need those funds to do this renovation. So my commitment on the town council would be to work on the financing structure with third-party money and the sources of money within the budget, like renegotiating the lease on black market as an example, to provide the sources of funds that you could use to pay for the renovation of this project without having it increase the amount of money the residents would have to spend. for the renovation or for supporting the bond issue. So that would be my commitment. And I believe that this is a very worthy project that really brings a lot of a wonderful resource for our town. I've used this town hall for many family and fun events, and I believe that after COVID, it may be used again to a greater degree.
Jeremy?
Thank you. I'll agree with Chris Keller that one of our priorities should be to improve the acoustics in this room. But that is already in the plan. It is in the requirements list. I think thus far, I'm very pleased that the council and the mayor through as a facilitator have settled on a concept design that is moderate. It's not overly luxurious. It's reasonable. And, but it's also not just slapping, pardon the phrase, lipstick on a pig either, right? We're looking to the future and making sure that this building will serve our community for many years to come and also be a welcoming place for many community activities, including those that involve more children. I've seen more children invited to activities such as the town dinner, and that can be hard to do without some additional space.
It's extremely hard.
Thank you. So I just think it's important to think about how the community has evolved over time and that facilities such as this one that may have met our needs in the past ought to evolve and meet our needs in the future. I've been an advocate for making sure that we have emergency backup power. I agree with the neighbor next door that we need to make sure that we have appropriate fire protection within the building. All of those things are important factors for us to consider right now. So we've come this far, and now we know how much funding we'll get from the state through the bond bill. We have a much better sense of what the gap of funding is to fund that concept design, and the hard work has to happen to decide how do we fund it, fund the gap. I'm open to a debt-based bond, but I don't think we have enough public input to know as a council to know for sure if that's the right path. So I would advocate for not rushing too quickly to make a decision, but to do some public input. Obviously, we have to, by the charter, do a referendum, but I'm not sure I would go to the referendum without doing a little bit more of sense making or public input, because a referendum costs money as well. There's a whole process involved there that costs money. So I think we should gather a little more public input about the interests that residents have, especially if we give them more clear information about what it will cost in terms of debt service and how we would be able to fund the gap with our existing budget. So that would be my proposal.
Chris, do you have anything?
Well, having just said that Penn Place should serve as template for town hall, I will associate myself with Lisa's remarks and say that debt service is probably not in the cards here, or issuing debt is probably not a solution at town hall. Town hall throws very little revenue in the way of rental. And in addition to the cost of a referendum, the financial cost, there would be the cost in time. It would delay the start of activity here. I think we need to pursue other avenues, including looking harder at what we already have. What we already have is a very considerable amount, and its purchasing power is eroding every day. That's why I'm a little leery of anything like issuance of debt that would introduce, in addition to other things, some delay. Stepping back and looking at the larger picture, town hall is an asset of the town. The town is a municipal corporation, and like any corporation, it has assets and liabilities. Garrett Park has the community center, Penn Place, town hall, and many other things that are assets. We have a responsibility to take care of them because we're all, so to speak, shareholders. You have assets. You have your home, your car, and so on. And if the home develops a leak, you need to take care of it. that's a very simplistic analogy, but it extends to other things too, because as you live in your home, it begins to have value beyond a cut and dried financial. You raise your family there, you have Thanksgiving dinner and one thing and another. This structure has value as an asset, as a financial asset, and as a community asset that contributes in ways that are not susceptible of a spreadsheet solution. So I think we need to be much more aggressive about pursuing the small, relatively small remaining amount that would permit us to go forward. Look with skepticism on issuance of debt and take a very broad view of this building as being a community asset in every sense of the word.
So this is a huge project that we're undertaking. We haven't done it in 20-something, a project this size in 20-something years. And I'm really proud of how far we've come. And I think that we are finally at a point in the timeline where we have big decisions to make. Not that we haven't before, but we see how much money we have, and we see all the other things in town that we want to make priorities as well. Not that we would choose them over town hall, but we can do multiple things at a time. But we have the opportunity. I think there are a few different ways that this project can go. We can wait until we hear in the fall from our federal, from our US senators and the budget there to see if there's any funding coming from that. We can just put this on hold and wait for that. We can give a thumbs up approval for the general concepts that we've already, as Jerry said, that the modified sort of very, not compromised, but very the program that we've already sort of whittled down to what are the very basics. And we can put that out to bid, knowing that some elements of that could be lobbed off later. Until we know more, like Lisa said, until we have more detailed drawings and more detailed data, we can't really know what's going to cost. But I think that now is a good opportunity for us to think, what's the minimum that we want to do for this building, and what could we put off for a second portion of the project? Is there a way that we can make this less expensive in the short term and do it in phases? Or are we willing to, are all the elements that are currently on the table of such importance that we're willing to be open to issuing, or to issuing, having debt service for part of this? Not that we would need it, but just that we want to sort of put our money where our mouth is and say, making this building a better place for current residents as well as future residents. We're willing to be open to taking out bond. But I do think this is a good time right now for us to talk about those options. And I'm hopeful that we will get back to the discussions of that, of where are we, and are we ready to take some forward steps, knowing that a little bit more later, but we can't really slow down any more than we already.
Betty, do we have anything in the chat?
Can you maybe move the eye chart and speak more into the line?
There are two parts of this question, so I'm gonna do the first one. I'm gonna summarize it a little. This is from Barbara Jackson on 10922 Montrose Ave. She's requesting more information about renovating the town office in Penn Place when there's one employee there. And folks can work from home, and she wanted more, I guess, a statement on, I guess, the decisions around doing that. That's the first question. The second one.
Are they different?
They are
topics?
different.
Yeah, let's
All right,
just
okay.
handle
All right.
the
I'll come
town
back.
office. Does anyone want to field the town office?
I'll go.
Sure. yeah.
This has been in the works for my predecessor, so more than 2 years ago. It initiated this project of renovating the third floor of Penn Place for town offices. And there have been numerous starts and stops, but the council has repeatedly affirmed commitment to having a facelifted as well as more functional space for town staff as well as for residents to use. One of the big pieces of this project that's going to be very important is a separate meeting space, a place that that committees could, instead of having to, I think this evening, no, not this evening, tomorrow, we have a budget session here tomorrow and we didn't have anywhere else to meet that was big enough and public. So Tai Chi had to get the boot, but with this new renovated space in the town offices, there will be a space where a public meeting could be held in the evening, things like that. We finally gotten our permits, so I think the starts and stops, let's hope, are coming to an end, and we will be getting close to a finish line soon.
Lisa.
The only thing that I would say is my understanding, Barb, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we did do the bond issue for Penn Place, it was 20 years ago. So the funds that in our budget that were needed to pay for that bond issue were done. So the money that we were using will no longer have to, will be freed up for other things within the town. So I just think that's an important thing to keep in mind in terms of the overall budget. In terms of the renovation of Penn Place, I do think that it will be a really nice amenity to have a meeting space with a bathroom and a separate entrance so that people who want to have a archives meeting or a parks and open space meeting will be able to have a place that they can do that without affecting the day-to-day operations of the staff and within the Penn Place offices. So that's all I have to say about it.
I'll just add a couple of points. The Penn Place limited renovation, I think that's has been, as the mayor mentioned, in the works since her predecessor. And I was very skeptical in the beginning, but I did appreciate being provided a tour by the staff at that time. Elizabeth Henley provided the tour. And I was surprised, actually, over the course of the 20 years since the Penn Place renovation had taken place, the space had deteriorated in terms of needing a facelift. And with the large furniture that's in that space, it was not very functional. You could see a lot of stacked up storage materials that made it very difficult for the town office staff to function. And so I did become convinced that a more functional alignment with more streamlined furniture would make the office space more useful. The council also insisted that one of the tenant spaces be repainted and made potentially available to put on the market for lease. And so that is part of the plan at this time, which may potentially generate some revenue. Coming out of COVID, that has not been a very popular option yet, but I think, the market will change over time and that may be more attractive. And then finally, I wanted to mention that you may have noticed that the outside of Penn Place was painted and the front door to the post office area was replaced with a hands-free electrical mechanism, which was also like a COVID measure in terms of providing the hands-free, no-touch door. And being an owner of an old house, one of the Victorians, I understand that just keeping up a historical building costs a lot in maintenance. And I think it's easy for a lot of us to forget that some of the things you need to do to keep a building up to date and functional does require an investment from time to time in these kind of beyond maintenance, but upgrades. And I think it was a very moderate, the council picked, I believe, if not the most limited renovation, perhaps the next up limited renovation. We were very conservative in our choice of what the architect offered to us.
Chris?
Yes, well, this train has left the station. There's not much point in raking over the coals of the past unless you glean from it lessons for the future. The Penn Place Town Office renovation started. The first concrete step was the discarding of a large library of books that had been donated by a town resident. There was no notice to Garrett Park residents. There was no opportunity to go in and just take one as a remembrance of Barbara Scheidler. I think the lesson here is communication and notice are necessary in every aspect of town operations. I would just say one thing. It is true that the revenue from town hall rents was sufficient to cover the debt service for 19 of the 20 years of the bond. The two outside tenants, both of whom happened to be town residents, were functionally evicted to take so that the town office could take over that space. So it is not the case that that space is still generating revenue that somehow offsets the cost of the renovation of the space. The space is now all town office, and it is our obligation to maintain it.
So if I may respond, the situation with the gardening books, it's not correct that the collection was decimated or destroyed or anything like that. They were weeded through for things that were relevant to the gardening, the mission of that collection. And they've been in storage while this renovation is going on. At the moment, I have asked that they be put back at without any further work needing to be done in that vestibule area. There's no reason for those books to not be put back. So that is something that we will get back. But the collection was culled. It was not destroyed by any stretch.
I'd like to also correct a point that Chris made. To my understanding, the previous tenant vacated during the previous mayor's term. I'm not sure, I'm not fully aware of the terms of that displacement, but that was a point that did make me skeptical. And so of the original proposal to renovate the space. So I did want to clarify that point.
Betty, was there another chat?
There are a couple more.
Did Ms. Jackson have a second question?
Well, actually, we've got some people in here who look like they're ready to. Do you have questions?
Yeah, but I wanted to.
Well, yeah, she got one question in, but we can. Well, we'll get Barbara after we get other people who get their first question. Sorry, Barbara. Just in fairness,
Sorry, Barbara.
you've been bumped.
Hi, I'm Jean Horan. Good evening, 4419 Cambria Avenue. And my question is for the two mayoral candidates. I heard, and I had to double check that I heard, you, Lisa, when you made a comment about how committees would be able to use space in Penn Place, and you mentioned the Parks and Open Space Committee. Well, a few of my colleagues in the room tonight and I were given the pink slip earlier in the year as the mayor decided to disband the Parks and Open Space Committee. And I would like to know from both of you, if you were elected, would you consider bringing that committee back, regardless of who's on it, just like the other committees in town have been, going strong for years. Thank you.
Chris, you want to take that first?
I'll just repeat what I said 25 minutes ago, yes.
Thank you.
Parks and Open Space is a mayoral committee. It's an ad hoc committee. As a result, the definition of ad hoc is that has a distinct purpose. And I do think that having a distinct charge, having a specific topic or area to consider is important. And so that's the direction that I think is best for, for how I would conduct that. I don't think that having a wide open committee for that is the appropriate thing.
Thanks.
My name's Perry Chapman, 10922 Kenilworth Avenue. I have actually two questions because one just came up about the collection of gardening books that were in the top floor at Penn Place. All kinds of people in the town thought they'd been discarded. There's been no communication.
Okay.
That's not really a question. My question
But
is.
if I may just respond to that really
Sure,
quick. I
go
mean,
ahead.
there was communication at the time. So this was done year plus ago. And there
Well-
was communication done. It hasn't necessarily there haven't been reminders put out. There's not a note up in that space that says, hey, if you're looking for these, we've got them in storage. I
Why-
got that, but
why-
it wasn't a dearth.
I
There
mean,
was,
why not put a note up? Because plenty of people in town think those books have been discarded and never got the first communication. I have I think perhaps more important question, which is, we're a small town. People appreciate this town for its charm, for its difference from other places around here. This is for the two mayoral candidates. What do you see the biggest challenge for Garrett Park going ahead? And what do you hope for the town, say 10, 15, 20 years from now?
does that have to be limited to us or, I mean?
It won't be. We'll give everyone an opportunity,
It's for
but
the mayoral candidates first.
I'm happy to oblige the request that start with the mayoral candidates. Joanna, you want to take that first or?
The biggest challenge that we face right now, it's one of those issues that we can't really talk about that much. I feel like Voldemort here, but it's, we have insufficient system for handling stormwater in this town. And it is a multi-year process for trying to find the right solution for it. We're working hard on that. And we are, I've asked that we slow down at least until after the election, before that comes up next, or before we make further decisions on that, because I think that's important for the future mayor to manage. I think that and knowing the cost of that, it puts a dark cloud over lots of other things that are important in this town. As for where I see this community in 10 to 15 years, I see it as continuing to be engaged and exciting, and the Citizens Association has done a tremendous job of making this a very exciting place to be. And I just think that with their continued diligence, that there'll be even more fun things like beer runs in town.
Chris?
Just us again. Okay. Biggest challenge. I think you're right, that Garrett Park is unique, and I think our biggest challenge is working together to retain that uniqueness, primarily through more fine-tuned engagement of citizens. And that includes in such mundane things as stormwater management. We need to get the citizens' views as well, and not just bid it out and get an off-the-shelf product. Another major challenge and that I hope will be reflected in 15 years as well, is making sure that we have a community that, in terms of the housing stock, will be receptive to a wide range of residents.
Yeah, that's something that I think is really important. When I moved in here 34 years ago, one of the things that attracted me about the town was the range of houses and pricing to have a diverse community. And it has been true that the affordable housing availability is certainly diminished, and I've been very excited about the accessory dwelling unit opportunity for those residents who would like to have an accessory dwelling unit in their house, to try to extend the amount of affordable housing in our town and in the county. In 15 or 20 years, I would like to see, one of the things I think I'm really proud of is the Arboretum Committee and all the beautiful trees that are here, and just the beauty of our town, and the young families that are moving in, and little kids riding their bikes again in the streets, and just seeing the vibrance and just a community of people who really get along and engaged and proud of what we've accomplished here. And I'd like more people to be more involved in the running and beautification of our town.
I think I'd piggyback on some of the other challenges that have been mentioned. We are part of a larger metropolitan area, but we are not just another suburb. But I often take either the 5 or the 37 bus when I don't walk to Metro, and I'm surprised at how few Garrett Parkers use our public transit. I think we want to be a walkable community. We want to have public transit, but maybe we could do more to encourage our residents to take advantage of the available transit that's here, so that we don't lose it due to lack of use. Also, I think I get a little scared about loss of not designated historic resources. I think it was great foresight that the town was made a historic district many, many years ago. And I know it's probably a political third rail to suggest it, but I don't think the town has protected enough of the properties in town that have historic value, and we are losing them. We're losing 2 Chevy houses that are not protected because they're not in the district right now, this week, last week. And it broke my heart to see the white Victorian that was torn down due to demolition by neglect of a previous owner. Just breaks my heart. And I just think that we as a town ought to come together and have the guts to protect more properties in town.
My name is Saguchi. I live at 11012 Montrose. And first, I'd like to thank everyone here who's willing to serve. It's really much appreciated. I know it's a difficult job. I have a question. It's really about disclosure or transparency. And that is, what will the candidates promise or endeavor to do in the way of improving timely financial disclosure? I've noticed my property taxes have increased. I've noticed the county lists Garrett Park as having the highest total rate of property tax in the county amongst purely municipal entities. And I've read that the operating budget in the past year increased 22%, and it left me wondering why. I mean, and I've read the budget documents, but I would encourage the candidates to think about ways to more clearly and in a more timely manner disclose what are the drivers of these costs, and whether you would consider looking at capping or reducing our tax rate. And when I say timely disclosure, I include things I believe the mayor just referenced. In the prior meeting, there was a mention of the.
I need to insist that we
This is
not talk about
privileged.
this. I
His
understand.
question was whether the town has retained an attorney to sue the county. This is referred to in the December documents the town manager put out, which include a memo that say we're in this dispute with the county. I've litigated my entire career with the Justice Department and in private practice. I know what's privileged. I've litigated the question. The fact that we are contemplating suing the county is not a privileged issue. The correspondence between the county and the town is not privileged. Privileged matters are between attorney and client. It's not what you're saying to an outside party. So that's an example of a potentially huge amount of expenditure that the town does not know about or know why we're doing it, how much it's going to cost, what the prospects are. Those are the kinds of things I'd like to see a commitment from our mayoral candidates and council candidates for better, more timely disclosure of the facts about why we're spending more, why our taxes are where they are, and whether we're about to incur large obligations like litigation on issues that are unclear. I've asked the town manager very
Thank you.
recently.
Can we have them in?
Yes, I've asked the
speak?
town manager very recently about the correspondence,
Okay,
and I'm waiting and expect an answer.
all right, thank you. Does anyone want to field that?
So my understanding is those requests were made in the last 24, 48 hours and that their response is eminent. I'm not trying to claim that anything is privileged that's not from a legal perspective, but rather one of the most difficult things about being in government in this town is the chatter, the way rumors start or little things, little bits of information go out are sort of discussed. And then we get a whole lot of uproar that makes it difficult for people who disagree with the uproar to speak out, and it makes it difficult then to know how to make decisions as elected officials because we've got all this chatter. And my wanting to preclude the discussion of the stormwater, I realized I raised it as a difficult topic, but in terms of the specifics of what actions or what we're doing right now, my wanting to curtail that is only because it makes it more difficult for us to do the diligent work of talking about it as a council and as elected officials the way that we're supposed to. It's a very complicated situation, and there is not a single chance of any decisions being made under cover of night. We just have not yet had the opportunity. And as I said a few minutes ago, I've asked that it sort of be slowed down until after the election so that the leadership on that issue can be done with the mayor that will be overseeing it for the coming years.
I'll address the questions about the financial disclosure. I think the town has a fairly routine schedule of managing its budget, and we have public meetings at least once a month, except for a break in the summer. And there are pretty detailed discussions, and I would compliment our current town manager for providing more information to the public about the budget that the council is considering in those meetings than I saw when I first joined the council. I was surprised at how little information was put into the public documents that were available for residents. So I encourage all residents to look at that information, to ask questions. I get questions routinely from some residents, but not many, about the basis of those costs. The town has not opted to increase, but to keep the same, the tax rate. It does affect an increase in actual taxes paid. That's the way that tax rate works. I think if we want to fund our priorities to renovate this building and to have funding available for our capital improvement plan for things such as stormwater management potentially, that we need to retain our current plan for the tax rate.
And I'll just say that as of my understanding, there's been no decision to sue anybody as of now. I think that it is something that will potentially be discussed, but I don't think that, my understanding is there's been no decision and no money has been spent in that regard to date.
Chris.
Well, I certainly agree with Joanna that chatter can be a distraction for elected officials. One way to deal with it, or at least try to tamp it down a bit, is try to get out ahead of the chatter with as much information as you can. I can't enlarge much on what I said earlier about litigation, the costs, financial and psychic, of litigation, but I'm reminded of the quote attributed to Emile Zola that he was only ruined twice in his life. Once when he lost a lawsuit and once when he won a lawsuit. And there's a message there. With respect to taxes, I was detailing some of the things, notice and communication and so on, that I would revive. One would be the annual notice to town residents of the availability of town property tax relief. The county has a so-called circuit breaker provision that if you meet certain criteria, you can obtain relief from a portion of your county property tax. At a time when I was on the council and there was concern about hardship on people from the town property tax, we determined to offer a relief provision, and rather than instituting our own with all of the administrative costs and other housekeeping aspects, we just piggybacked on the county. If you qualify for the county property tax relief, you automatically qualify for town tax relief. I would resume giving notice of that fact.
Hi, my name is Courtney Culp and I live on 10707 Montrose Avenue. And I just want to repeat to say, I really appreciate you all for volunteering your work to, take care of this town. And to Barb, who is so accessible and so knowledgeable that, anytime I try to call her about stuff, she is right there answering every question. So anyway, so with that, since I live on Montrose Avenue and we've had a flood issue that's really been a problem for many years.
Flood, you're saying?
Flood. So we need a drain desperately. Is there a way we could do that? Because I know Barb has been very good about helping us kind of brainstorm with that and invited, I think, somebody from Montgomery County to come out. And where? Town engineer, okay. And I'm just curious if we could get some money from like the state, maybe the transportation, or even the federal government. You think about it, they're throwing money out there, right? To help with stuff like this. So, I think between, maybe the town and the state and even the feds to help us out with this, because it's been a problem on our street for years and it's getting worse. Just saying. So anybody have any ideas about that? From the audience too. Come on.
So this very squarely falls into the category of storm drainage and one of the things that we've had to be very cautious of, the background, the big picture is that it's unsettled whether or who owns our storm drainage. This is public information. This is something that we've talked about for a very long time. There's question whether it is owned by the town or owned by the county. And that's the situation that we're trying to resolve very gingerly. But one piece of that is the county has pointed to discrete projects that we've undertaken, small projects, pockets throughout the town, and said, see, you guys admit that you own it and you've put money there. And so we have to be very careful about what specific projects we undertake so as to not counteract the other efforts that we are trying to undertake. I hope I'm saying this, Jerry, please jump in. You know this stuff as much as I do. We're trying to work through it as quickly as we can. And it's not as easy as just, hey, let's go, spend some money. One of the things that's in our capital budget proposal that we'll be discussing tomorrow night is undertaking a townwide survey. This is something that is important regardless of who has legal ownership of the storm drainage system. We need to know what we have. And so that is a piece that we that we are proposing to undertake, is an inventory of the system that we do have. And unfortunately, the other pieces have to just wait for the greater good.
I'll only add to that to say, I think it's helpful if residents notice issues with stormwater management, that sharing that information with the town office so that they can document it, keep track which locations are having issues, storm drains clogging. I know we had a case recently with a builder pouring hazardous materials down a storm drain, and it was because a resident flagged that to the town office, that the town was able to at least follow up on that case. I know that's a little bit unrelated, but I think it is really important. We've been talking about communication a lot. Residents have a communication role as well. If you're hearing rumors, talk to the town office, ask the town office to confirm or clarify information that's being spread around, and help to fix that problem of rumors being spread that may not be true, but also help the town to track stormwater management issues so I know a lot do get raised and they do get shared with the town, but I'd be willing to bet that there are some that the town is not tracking. And that could be really helpful if and when we do that survey, or when these issues of ownership get clarified.
The only thing I'll say about stormwater management is that it is a big issue, and it is something that we're dealing with as a town issue, county issue, state issue, country issue. But one thing to keep in mind is that it's not a discrete system. There's parts of the stormwater management system that are owned by the county or the state that tie into what is on our system. So in order to repair it or make it better, we don't have total control over all of the inputs and outputs of the system. So it's a bigger, more complex problem than just something that Garrett Park can undertake specifically. So that's all I'll say about it.
Chris?
I can come by tomorrow morning with a shovel. I can come by tomorrow morning with a shovel. No, you shouldn't make light of it. Stormwater is complex. As Lisa just pointed out, we handle the runoff from a state highway, Strathmore, Knowles, as well as our own streets. I think it's the kind of thing sort of analogous to a couple of other things we've discussed this evening that needs to be clearly prioritized and addressed. But if you make everything a priority, then nothing's a priority. And looking at the budget that the town council, the town council is meeting tomorrow in this space. The town council is meeting tomorrow in this space on the 2025 budget. I think it could use some real focus because there are an awful lot of priorities there.
Are you all looking to get out of here at 9 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay, so
All for it.
Sorry.
we got, wait, let's do Jane.
And then last one.
If we can, and if I can ask everyone to be brief and then to be brief on your closing. I think this has been a really awesome event and I think you all gave some amazing answers and there's been great questions out there. And let's just try to wrap it up a little faster. So go ahead.
Hello, Jane McClintock. I'm at 4405 Oxford Street, and as a former member of the town council, I want to reiterate the gratitude that everyone has expressed for being willing to volunteer for free your hours and your time to make this town what it is. So my question for all the candidates, and this is tagging into the stormwater question that's been raised, that is in many respects an externalized problem from our highway. But it's also a problem from the town streets, right? Like the night that I was elected to the town council, my basement flooded because of all the water rushing down Oxford Street and right into my driveway and into my basement window well. It was like a submarine. My husband was bailing out the window well. So, I think the town does have a responsibility to manage and mitigate stormwater when that is an issue that can be exacerbated by town infrastructure. However, I think there's also an important aspect, and what I'd like to get all the candidates' input on is that there's a very real private issue, because when people have green grass yards, grass is not absorbent. A turf lawn is about as absorbent as concrete. Water will run right off a turf lawn. So in many cases, people on the downhill side are suffering the landscaping choices of people on the uphill side who want to have manicured green lawns with, yard services out there every week mowing them. So I would really like to know from the candidates, what will you as part of the town administration do to help educate people? This is an everybody problem. This is not just a problem that's on the town to fix and on the town taxpayer to fix. This is also an issue of what choices neighbors make in terms of whether they put rainscaping into their yards so that the water has a chance to infiltrate and absorb and not just simply sluice into the street. It's a question of what kind of gutters do people have and whether they've installed infrastructure such as a cistern to manage that water. So this is a community responsibility. It should not simply be on the town to fix all the problems. So I'd really like to know what you as town officials can do to help raise that awareness and promote solutions for private landowners, not simply put it all on the taxpayer.
Who wants to field that first?
I'd like to suggest we give our mayoral candidates
No.
for time to respond first.
Great. How about you take it first?
Sure. I would promote the heck out of the county rainscapes program. Jane, as you know, they just upped the amount that the county will reimburse you for installing so-called rain gardens, which are essentially water settlement basins that slow down the velocity of the water and allow it to percolate in and not erode as heavily. How do you publicize that? Well, I would like to have little, as I hope I mentioned earlier, very local, small scale, informal meetings at various locations in town over various issues. And one would be rain gardens. 12 or more years ago, the county installed at its own expense a number of rain gardens on this side of Strathmore in town. It's very instructive to actually see these and not have to sort of conceptualize, visualize. And I would think that one very effective way of publicizing this would be to literally see the effect of a rain garden in managing stormwater runoff.
Yes. I'm gonna just have to leave.
Joanna agrees.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we have time for one more. No, we don't. All right, let's do some closing statements. So why don't we start, Geraldine?
I'll just say thank you very much for participating today. It's really great to see so many people turn out for Garrett Park to govern itself and to continue to improve ourselves for the future. I love hearing the input via questions today, and I will definitely try to take those to heart over the next 2 years.
I'm thrilled to be able to serve. I feel like it's a wonderful way to give back to this community that I've enjoyed for so many years. And I really appreciate the generosity of all of you who care so much about the town. And I think if anybody wants to talk to me about any issue at any time, I'm happy to meet with any of you because I don't go to work anymore. So I've got lots of time. And thankfully, and it's just been a real wonderful part of my professional life to be able to contribute to a community that I care so much about.
Chris?
I'll be very brief, but first, just to tie up one loose end. I share Jerry Lee's real heartbreak at the potential loss of 2 Chevy houses, which would be the first full demolitions of a Chevy house in their 100-year existence. And our Historic Preservation Committee, full disclosure on which I currently serve, has been very active, and I'm sure would like to take on the challenge of figuring out a way to incentivize the preservation of Chevy houses and other valuable assets in town that are not currently protected. And I'm choosing my words very carefully. I think you need to incentivize this. You cannot require it. Now, in terms of winding up, let's not be disingenuous. This is a contested election, but I hope as you cast your vote, and I hope everybody does cast vote, it's May 6th, and they make registration if you're not already registered, and voting by absentee ballot if you need it, very easy. So be sure to vote. But I hope as you cast your ballot, you won't see it as a contest between 2 individuals, but 2 slightly different ways to get to the same goal, which is the preservation in this town of the things that make it unique and the things that brought us here in the first place. They change a bit over time, but they're very worthy of finding every method you can to preserve.
So I'm very aware of how clumsy I sound in these kind of forums. And so I have to just rely on the extensive list of things that we've accomplished in the last 2 years and the things that are in process and that are coming up in the coming months and coming years. And to speak on, in ways that those things speak much better than me. And I very much agree with Chris. This is not about individuals. This is about different approaches for how to make sure that Garrett Park can be as wonderful for the coming generations as it has been for the previous generations. And I think that I think you're gonna. I'd like to think that you get a winner with either one of us. So but please do vote. Yes.
Yeah. And I want to thank all of you as well. I counted 42 attendees here, and and we have a packed house for those who were unable to make it, and we're just thrilled. We're thrilled to see so many involved citizens. We're thrilled to see you. Sometimes we don't see you enough. And with that, we're gonna close the candidates forum. Of course, we urge you to vote. Voting is in
May 6th.
May 6th. So coming up, and you're gonna hear a lot more about it on the listservs, which hopefully you're all. Thank you.